Now, on behalf of Hope Not Hate Scotland, I would really like to extend to each and every one of you a very warm welcome, as I say, on behalf of Hope Not Hate Scotland. This International Brigade Memorial is special in many more ways than one. But if we think back to Spain in the 1930s, if we think back to Europe in the 1930s, what a Europe it was. A period of fascist consolidation, fascism in power in Germany, in Italy, in Hungary, on the back of a serious, profound crisis of capitalism. And so the context within which this meeting of the International Brigade Commemoration is taking place needs to be seen very much in the context of the current crisis of capitalism, where we are witnessing absolutely swinging cuts against the public sector, all the people who use the public sector, attacks on our National Health Service, attacks on the postal services and the railways, attacks on trade union rights, the complete erosion of collective bargaining rights, attacks on the unemployed, the youth of our country, attacks on pensioners, and the emergence yet again of racism and the far right. But it's not simply attacks on us. There are signs of the potential for further left and democratic development with the resurgent left within the Labour movement and the Labour Party in particular. Because the only way that the ruling class and imperialism can actually find a way out of their crisis is by making other people pay for their crisis, and that's people like us, people who use the public services, people who work in the public sector. Austerity, TTIP, foreign military adventures in the Middle East and in the Ukraine. All of this signals a deep and profound crisis of the capitalist system. And it is a crisis that we, given the appropriate level of organisation, can take advantage of. So there is potential, but potential is one of those things that can go either way. In the 1930s, of course, it was very different. There was the international context within which the war in Spain developed. But there are similarities and there are differences. The Soviet Union no longer exists. There is now no longer any effective counterweight in the international arena to American imperialism, US imperialism. But there is potential, and it's up to each and every one of us in honouring the men and women who fought in Spain all those years ago. It is up to every one of us to make sure that the potential that exists in the current political situation goes our way, and that the crisis of capitalism is not resolved in terms and conditions favourable to the ruling class, but on terms and conditions that are favourable to working class people and their communities. And the critical factor in that is the Labour movement, just as it was the critical factor in the struggle against fascism in the 1930s, so it is the case now. Comrades, our speakers today are a reflection of the common thread that runs through the generation of anti-fascists from the 1930s up to the present time. We're very lucky indeed to have Mike Arnott who will be speaking on behalf of the International Brigades Memorial Trust in Scotland. Mike is the secretary of that organisation, and it plays a very important educational campaigning role in making sure that the memory of the International Brigades is kept alive. We are also very, very pleased indeed and very, very privileged to have a living link with the anti-fascist movement in Germany, the 1930s. And we are very, very pleased indeed to welcome to our city and to our country Vera Thälmann, the granddaughter of Ernst Thälmann, Germany's pre-war communist leader. It is a matter of immense pride and immense significance to have Vera in our city, given the fact that not only did men and women go out from this country, from Britain and Scotland, but the Thälmann Battalion played a sterling role, a leading role in the work of the International Brigades. So we are immensely proud to have Vera with us as a living link with the past and the anti-fascist movement in the 1930s. And as I said, there is a common thread between the anti-fascist movement in the 1930s and the current political situation. if one thing we can learn from the anti-fascist movement in the 1930s, it is that it's not enough simply to have slogans. The left and the class need a programme of its own, and we are very lucky indeed to have Keith Stoddart, who is here today representing the People's Assembly. The running order for today is going to be Mike first, then Vera, and then Keith, and we will have some entertainment for you, some songs and so on and so forth, and then there will be the laying of the wreath. But I think I've set it up just now, so we'd really like to get the speakers underway. So I'd really like to give people to give a big round of applause for Mike.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the invitation. It's always a delight to come through to this marvellous memorial. And indeed, on August the 23rd, 2010, Thomas Waters stood on this very spot as the guest of honour at the rededication of this memorial following its restoration. He was 97 years old, born in Alloa, and had been a Glasgow bus driver when he volunteered to join the Scottish Ambulance Unit to go to Spain. They left in trucks and buses from George Square exactly 80 years ago this month. When Thomas died in 2012, we lost the last living connection we had from Scotland with those who'd gone to Spain. Thomas remembered being sent to search the forward positions in Spain to make contact with Scottish medical student David Mackenzie, whose mother wanted him back home from Spain. His father was a rear admiral and had disowned his communist son some time before. David was a member of the British machine gun group attached to the Marseillaise battalion. The Daily Worker had reported him dead, but he was seen by Brigadier Esmond Romilly in a Madrid hotel with a group of English journalists telling them that he was very much alive. Mackenzie later told Romilly that all his group in the Marseillaise had asked to transfer over to the Tailmans. They thought the Germans were easier to get on with, but apparently Romilly didn't share that opinion. So in just one short paragraph there, we go from Alloa to Madrid, meeting Glasgow bus drivers, Hamburg dockyard workers, French plumbers, and the nephew of Winston Churchill. That was internationalism. That was Spain. Later in 36, more buses left George Square. These were volunteers to go and fight. Glasgow sent over 200 to Spain, including Jimmy Maley from just behind us over there, James Ray from just down the river on the other side there, Jock Cunningham, born in a Langloans colliery house in Balgrey Road, and Steve Fullerton from Shettleston. He was the last of the Scottish Brigadiers to die back in 2008. They fought beside the side of the Spanish people with their international comrades, and many fell in the slaughter of Jarama, the slaughter of Brunetti, and the slaughters of Calacete, Belchite, and Gandesa. A man came up to me in Dundee in the street on Monday. He recognised the Republican badge on my badge and started to talk about a long-dead brigadier he knew from Aberdeen, who had then gone on from Spain to fight in the Second World War. The brigadier had told me I was in Burma, but 1 week in Spain was worse than 3 weeks in Burma. On the 7th of December 1938, the main remnant of the British battalion returned to Victoria Station in London after fighting fascism for more than 2 years. This is from a press report of the time. Led proudly by their wounded comrades, they marched into London. With them marched the spirit of Byron, the Tolpuddle martyrs, the Chartists, Keir Hardie, Britain's bravest fighters for liberty through the centuries. Behind them and around them marched 20,000 British Democrats. Men as well as women wept and cheered. It was no political affair, for all parties were represented, both on the platform and in the crowd. It was British democracy spontaneously expressing its abhorrence of fascism and its appreciation of bravery. They had made history by forming part of the greatest international democratic army the world has ever known. They had inspired the world by their example. The men and women who fought or drove or nursed in Spain knew why they went: to fight the evil of fascism, aware of the consequences for their friends and families, and indeed the wider world, if it triumphed. By being here today, we keep alive the memory of those who volunteered to fight in a conflict, in a country of which they knew little, but whose outcome they knew to be crucial to their own lives. We keep alive the memory because their fight, the fight against fascism, continues. Just as it reared its ugly head in the depression and austerity of the 1930s, it persists in the austerity and despair of today, in Greece, in Hungary, and even on the streets of our own country. It feeds on people's suffering and aims to set our communities against each other. We keep alive the memory at events like this, at memorials like this up and down the country. This year, commemorations have already taken place in Dundee, in Motherwell, in Edinburgh, in Whithorn, and in Renton. Next February, for the 7th time, a number of us will return to the Spanish town of Tarancon for a ceremony with the local townsfolk there, which remembers both those from Scotland who fell in the Battle of Jarama and the citizens of Tarancon who were murdered by the Franco regime. Us coming here and remembering Spain and remembering those from this city and this country who went to fight, coupled with Vera's presence here, reminding us of the internationalism of those they went to fight, and then the fact that we stand together with those in Spain today, remembering the contribution their people made alongside our people, is a reflection of that internationalism that goes back 80 years. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mike. Mike there reminding us that for us, for the left, for the socialists, for the communists and all left-wing people, history is never really just about the past. It's about the influence of the past and the way in which it impacts on the present and the way in which we conduct ourselves politically in the current situation.